What's going on, everybody? This is Emerald Knight Leon. I'm back with another deck analysis after a bit of a week of a burnout hiatus. Today's deck analysis is actually one I'm actually really happy to be doing right now because I was just at a tournament and I got first place with this deck, actually. And this is X-Antibody. Now, this analysis is going to be a little different because I'm going to show two versions of this deck. This version, which is the one that I used to get first place, and then another version which does run a certain card that a lot of X-Antibody decks do run, but might not be the best card if you have a very strict budget. And we'll get to that in a bit. So to start everything off, we are running 5 Digi Eggs here. We're running 4 copies of Doraemon. Doraemon is from the BT7. He is an X-Antibody. He has the effect of once per turn during your turn, when one of your effects places a Digivolution card under this Digimon, draw 1. So this is going to be very useful because we're going to use it in conjunction with Doragreymon over here, as well as Doragora, to be able to get those draws in case you don't have Doragora. You can use it for Doragray's effect to hopefully get your Doragora, or use it to be able to get another card such as Metal Cannon or Final Zubagon Punch if you're able to get lucky with your draws. We're also going to run 1 copy of Pagumon. Pagumon is mainly here just to have, when Digivolving our Chumons or the one Chikurimon that we have, mainly just so that we can sack it off if needed to get its effect off, where we can reveal the top card of our deck. If it's a black Digimon, we add it to our hand, otherwise it goes to the bottom. Every card here is a black Digimon outside of our options and our tamers. So odds are you're going to get a card out of it. On our rookies, we are running 4 copies of Toy Agumon. This is the Agumon that has Reboot as its inherited. It's going to be very useful because we are using this in conjunction with the Metal Greymon over here to be able to get an extra security attack so that we can, when we are using Doragora's effect, we can stack Doragrays under it. We'll also be running 2 copies of Chumon. Chumon, if you have a third, I would take the Chikuri out and put a third Chumon in. Chumon is here to help us prevent our opponents from gaining too much memory. You'll have, say, a lot of decks might be running memory boost cards. You know, it just prevents that. Moving on, I do run 1 copy of Chikuri. If I had a third Chumon, which I do, and I'm gonna switch it out, but it's really here just in case it comes through security to get that trigger D Digivolve 1. But that's really all it's there for. Finally, we are running 4 copies of Doraemon. Doraemon he can serve 2 purposes. Either if you have 2 in your hand at the start of the game, you're likely going to just Digivolve 1 into your breeding so that you automatically have his effect of gaining 1 memory when you place a Digivolution card under this Digimon. And then you can hard play the second one to start searching through your deck. Otherwise, if you had 2 in a coda, you would play the 1 in breeding and then play a coda, and then play the second one during the next turn. Another option for this card is saving it for when either your first Doru is dead and you need a backup one, or save it for when you have Doragora, so that on the first turn, if you have Final Zubagon Punch or you have it with Reboot, you stack it under, and then the second time you're going to gain more memory off of its effect. Onto our level 4s, we are running 3 copies of Numemon, 2 copies of Tankmon, 2 copies of Grumblemon, and 4 copies of Dorugamon. So Numemon and Tankmon are here for the same purpose, okay? It is warping. You want to see him so that you can just Digivolve your rookie immediately. If it's at the start of the game, you're choking your opponent to 1 if you're going first. And it's really there so that you have more X-Antibodies available to stack under Doragora. Numemon can also serve as essentially a play at the start of the game. If you don't have any rookies in hand, you could just hard play him because he is a 3 cost. Grumblemon is here as an extra win condition. Really, if you don't have enough Digimon, but you have Doragora and you clear your opponent's security, and you have Grumble and a Tamer, you can go with Grumblemon for the win if you have enough memory. It's why I like having the 2 Doramons, because say you're going against Yellow Hybrid, they might have Purple Kari, which will let them gain memory, and the Doragora's effect combined with Doramon's will help you regain that memory if needed. Uh, Finally, we have Doragamon. Doragamon here it can come in clutch really for its main effect. So while you have another Digimon in play with X-Antibody or a card with X-Antibody in its Digivolution cards, he gains blocker. Really good for clutch stalling. If your opponent doesn't have a way to get around those blockers, it gives you a few more turns to work with. His Inherited is also very useful. So while this Digimon has X-Antibody in its traits, it gets plus 1000 DP all turns. So if you had 2 copies of him under Doragora, then Doragora is going to be at 13,000 during your opponent's turn, regardless of things. If you combine it with Final Zubagon Punch, he's at 16,000, and he's going to have blocker, reboot, and security attack plus 1. Moving on to our level 5s, we are running 6 level 5s here. Obviously, we're running 4 copies of Doragreymon. He is really good. He can, in certain situations, work as a ADP or a delicate plan when you have enough memory. And the reason for that is if you are able to get about 5 or 6 memory, and you have Doramon under him, which is why you can do this with 5. You play Digivolve into Doragray. You use his effect to put an X-Antibody under him. It could be another Doragray, it could be a Doraga, or it could be another Doramon. And then Doramon's effect will trigger, so you gain 1 memory. So you go from 2 memory to 3 memory. Then you Digivolve into Doragora. And from there, the effect of Doragray actually does translate over to Doragora. So for that turn, he can't be deleted by card effects or reducing its DP. So you can go into Doragora and swing into your opponent for 2, 3 checks if you added another Doragray under, and really go to town on your opponent by negating most of their effects. So that can really be useful. It's actually a strategy that I used that got me some of my wins. Finally, we are running 2 copies of Metal Greymon. This is the BT2 Metal Greymon. He is also available in Tamer Pack 3. And he has Reboot naturally. But we're concerned about that. What we have him here for is his Inherited. While this Digimon has Reboot, it gains security attack plus 1. We use this in conjunction with Toy Agumon over here. So, because you only have 4 Doragreymons, you need to use them sparingly. So what you have is, if you go Toy Agu, go to Doraga, then Metal Greymon, and then you go into Doragora, and then put Doragray under it, you're going in for 3 checks with Reboot. That does mean that he is susceptible to getting hit by a option card coming out of security, which is unfortunate, but it is an option that you can go with, and it can sometimes really help and deal a lot of damage to your opponent. On our level 6s, we are not running level 7s, but for our level 6s, we are running 2 copies of Alphamon here, and 4 copies of Doragora. So Alphamon can be useful. He only really gets his time to shine when he's coming out of security, and otherwise he's really here as an extra X-Antibody to put on Doragora. His security effect is, at the end of battle, add this card to your hand. Then, if a Digimon with Royal Knight or X-Antibody in its type is in play, up to 12 of your opponent's Digimon can't attack players for their turn. This is useful, except when you're going against hybrid decks, because his security effect doesn't affect Digimon that are being Digivolved into play from Tamers. sadly. So your opponent can still swing in with their hybrids. So if your opponent has a lot of memory to work with or a lot of Bokomons, then you're still kind of screwed. He does have his time to shine when attacking. You may pay up to 5 memory. If you do, this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP for the turn for each memory paid. So you could Digivolve him on top of Dor Gray, so he'll have 2 checks, or if he has Toy Agumon, Metal Greymon for 2 checks, and then either pay some memory or don't pay memory. Uh, and he'll be swinging at 11 to 12 unless you're paying more memory than 13 if you have Dorga under him, so he has an extra 1,000. And then at the end of the attack, you're going to gain 2 memory. So this can be very useful if he is coming in late game to do the final damage and give you enough memory to go into Grumblemon. Moving on to Doragora. Doragora is the star of the show here. During your turn, for each card with X-Antibody in its trait in its Digivolution stack, he gets plus 1,000. At most, like early on, if you are doing a Dorumon, Numamon, Dorgray, so that's 12, 13. You're going to go 14 if you place another X-Antibody, 15 if you go with Dorga. And then you can, if you have enough memory, go to Final Zubagon Punch, bringing up to 19 or 20, depending on if you were Digivolving into Dora Gray, you already have another card under it. And he's going to have a lot of DP, and he's going to swing for a lot of security checks. There are some versions of the deck that I'll talk about in a bit, where he can swing for 5 to 6 checks if he's played right. He also has the extra benefit of once per turn when attacking, you may play 1 card with X-Antibody and its traits from your hand at the bottom of this Digimon's Digivolution cards to delete up to 2 of your opponent's Digimon with play costs less than or equal to this Digimon's Digivolution cards. So that really also helps with board clearing your opponent of their lower end level 4 and 5 3s. And if you are running with the Dora Gray, you can even take out some of the lesser level 5s. Moving on to our option cards, we are running 4 different option cards here. We're running 3 copies of Final Zubagon Punch. This is a very useful card because it gives one of your Digimon plus 3,000 DP until the end of the opponent's next turn. And if that Digimon has 16,000 DP or more, they gain Blocker, Reboot, and Security Attack plus 1. So there are a couple ways you can play this card. Either you don't have enough memory or you have like 1 memory and your opponent has no memory fixer. So you'll swing with Doragora to get the 2, maybe 3 checks if you have 2 Dora Grays or Metal Gray and a Toy Agumon. And you will swing for 2 to 3 checks. He does not die, and then you'll pass turn by playing Final Zubagon Punch to give him Reboot and Blocker. So if you have the Toy Agumon, he's already going to have Reboot, but now he's going to have Blocker so that he can block your opponent if needed. And then if he doesn't have Toy Agumon, he'll gain Reboot and Blocker still. So he'll still be a force to be reckoned with. Plus he has the extra 3,000. Our next is we're running 2 copies of Iron Fisted Onslaught. This is it's just a useful card, really. It has come in clutch. It sometimes will come in through security, and other times you'll just have to hard play it. If your opponent is running Yellow Hybrid, they're probably going to give you a lot of memory at certain points. Especially the hybrid decks that revolve around a lot more board controlling by running Iron Fist Onslaughts and a bunch of other stuff, or Wyvern's Breath. And they're going to give you a lot of memory, so you can then fight back by having your own. We're running 2 copies of Metal Cannon, or as I just like to call it, Steel Ball. It is actually it's come in clutch actually for me. So how I usually use it is I'll use it to pass turn if my opponent doesn't have a memory fixer, and it'll also give me extra draw power. So you select one of your X-Antibody Digimon in play, and then you can draw 1 for each card in that Digimon's Digivolution stack. So if you have Dora Greymon, but you need your Doragora, you can pass turn by having using Metal Cannon, so that you're getting one, two, three, four cards out of it if you used Dora Gray's effect. You can get 5 to 6 if you're using Doragora when you use that card, and it's really good for getting that extra draw, especially if you need Grumblemon for the win. At that point, it will help you draw into your Grumblemon if it's not in security. Finally, we're also running Black Memory Boost here. We're running 2 copies of it. It's simple. Reveal top 4 cards of your deck, add a Black Digimon to your hand. The remaining go to the bottom in any order. And then he has the delay effect of gaining 2 memory. So this can come in clutch if you don't have your memory fixer out yet and you need to get the extra memory to go into your Dora Gray or Doragora. It can also be useful if you have the Dorumon and going into an Akoda, so that you could go into getting 5 memory to go to Dora Gray to use Dorumon's effect to gain a memory, then to go to Doragora. So there are ways you can use it to facilitate an easier time at taking out your opponent's security. Finally, our tamers, we're running 3 copies of Izzy and Joe. Izzy and Joe, you just gain 2 more memory if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon. And then when one of your black Digimon is deleted during your opponent's turn, you can suspend this to trigger draw 1. And then we're finally running 4 copies of Coda. Coda is our memory fixer, so if we have 2 or less memory at the start of the turn, we go to 3 automatically. And then reveal top 4 cards of your deck, add 1 card with X-Antibody and its trait among them to your hand, and then place the remaining at the bottom of your deck in any order. You're usually going to use this at the start of the game if you have it, in order to try to get the X-Antibodies you need in hand. Or if you already have everything in hand, to get an extra one to use Dora Gray's or Doragora's effect. So that is it for this deck. On to the potential cards you can run. We'll talk about a different version of the deck that we have here. And that is with one of the possible tech cards that we have. Tsunorizamon. So, Tsunorizamon is a really good card. The problem is that its price, if you have a very strict budget, you're not going to be able to get a lot of them. Currently, as of right now, its market price is $24.12. I personally feel that having up to 2 copies, 3 at the most, in your deck is probably the way to go, because you don't want to get rid of, say, your Chumon or your Toy Agumon. So as you can see from how the deck list is shifted, most of it is the same, except for our rookie lineup. So in our rookie lineup, we are running 3 Toy Agumons and no Chikuris, 3 Chumons, and still the 4 Dorus. The reason Tsunoriza is such a good card for X-Antibody is both its main effect and its inherited. So its inherited is, while this Digimon is black and has 13,000 DP or more, it gains security attack +1. So by combining that with, say, Dora Gray and the other X-Antibodies, Doragora is going to have 3 to 4 checks naturally. If he's on top of Metal Greymon, and then you put Dora Gray under it, and you have a Doraga as your champion on it, so that goes to 11, 12, 13, 14, which is enough to trigger Tsunoriza's effect. So you're going to get 1, you're going to get 2, and you're going to get 3 extra checks. And if you have enough memory, 4 extra checks with Zubagon Punch. So this is how you're able to at times just swing in for 5 checks automatically. And if an option card doesn't come out to kill it, it's game most of the time. His regular main effect is actually also really good as well. All of your black Digimon with 13,000 DP or more gain Piercing. This turns Doragora from a threat to a monster, because what then happens is he's swinging over pretty much everything on board because of the amount of DP he can gain from having every X-Antibody under him. And because of that, just swinging into one of your opponent's suspended Digimon and then going in for 5 checks, 4 to 5 checks is going to be insanely bad for you if you're going against that. It's worse because if your opponent uses Zubagon Punch, he now has blocker and reboot. So you can see how that's an issue. The problem is, as I said, Sunariza is expensive. It used to be about $30 a couple weeks ago. When they announced that they were reprinting Sunarizamon, it went down to 28 and now it's at 24. So how they reprinted it is that when you buy a booster box from certain stores that have supplied those, that Bandai has supplied with the Sunarizas, for example, BT4 and EX collection, they will give you one Sunariza. So either you order the 2 to 3 copies of Sunarizamon off of TCG Player, and that's going to go upwards to $80 probably. Or you buy a booster box, get one Sunariza, and get a bunch of extra cards, including some secret rares. It really boils down to what you need more at the time. Personally, in my opinion, I would go with the booster box just to get any extra secrets or alt arts, because I love collecting those. But I could see why someone would instead just order the 3 to 4 copies that they want. On the other end, I have to note that Alphamon is actually has gone up in price quite a bit again. In preparation for BT8, it's currently, as of right now, its regular artwork is almost $30 for market price on TCG Player, and the alternate art has gone to $51, almost $52. So if you're looking for Alphamons, maybe buy a BT6 booster box if you're feeling really lucky. And if you have the budget, then buy them singles. So that is this altered version of this deck. Onto our tech cards that we could put in outside of Sunarizamon. Starting with our Digi Eggs, and if you don't want to use Pagumon, you could go with Kapurimons from the BT2 and the starter deck. The BT2 one, if it has reboot, it has plus 1,000, and the starter deck is if it has blocker, it gets plus 1,000. I don't see why you would use this, but I can understand why. Mainly because you're going to use that in conjunction with, say, in the case of the reboot one, with Toy Agumon, or with the Kapurimon with Zubagon Punch or one of our other level 5s if you're not using the Metal Greymon. We've talked about Sunarizamon. In terms of your level 4s, you could run Mechanori for more blocker-oriented. You could run the Nightmon package, as they do also revolve around putting Digivolution cards under them, so that you can still trigger Dorimon's effect off of Skull Nightmon here. If Dory is under Skull Nightmon, you can then add Deadly Axemon under it. So that will trigger Dorimon's effect of draw 1, and potentially Dorimon's effect of gain 1 memory. You also have Dark Tyrannomon, who is a 1-cost Digivolution and a blocker. Warumanzamon is a good card because it's a 5-cost. You can hard play that and then just go straight into your level 6. If you're banking on your opponent not attacking you and waiting, the Volcanomon can be useful because it'll give you an extra security check if your opponent has an unsuspended Digimon in play. As I mentioned, Dark Nightmon already. And then there's Megadramon from Starter Deck 5. This gives blocker to your level 6, so it is very useful to use in conjunction with the Kapurimon over here. As for your level 6s, there is Craniumon if you want to run a little more Royal Knights with blockers, and also Gankumon, where when Digivolving, he's going to delete all of your opponent's Digimon with the lowest play cost. If your opponent has a lot of the same hybrids out, it's just going to wreck their field. And then if they have an unsuspended Digimon, he gets security attack plus 1, so you're just adding more damage. On to our level 7s. If you wanted to run level 7s, there are quite a few options. I do have to remind people, Sword to Feed is still an expensive card. If you don't have the budget for it, that is fine. You don't need it. There are other ways to play the deck. It is a really good card. That goes without saying. But you don't need it specifically, unless you're running a very, very specific build that you have in mind. But we do have Millenniummon over here, which when Digivolving, you can return opponent's Digimon to the bottom of the deck. If they're running a lot of Ancients, that's going to wreck them because they won't be able to trigger their Ancients on deletion effect. And then on deletion, if he had a Digivolution card under him, he can play this. You can play this card for free. If you wanted to run more X-Antibody oriented, you could run Omnimon Alter S or Omnimon Zwart, as well as X-Antibody, so that when you go into the Alter S or Zwart, then go into X-Antibody for a 3 cost. As despite him having a Digivolution cost for 6 on blue and red, if he's Digivolving onto an Omnimon, it ignores the Digivolution requirements and it goes for a memory cost of 3. So that's very useful. Also, he does have a semi-broken effect of when attacking, delete an opponent's Digimon with DP less than or equal to this Digimon's DP, which, when you take into account the fact that Dora Gray and Dorga give both security attack +1 and an extra 1,000 to a Digimon with X-Antibody, makes Omnimon X-Antibody a more broken thing. It does require teching your deck in with extra cards in order to make sure that you are able to get to X-Antibody if you want to go that route. One such card is Metal Mamemon, because he has the on Digivolution effect of return 1 level 7 Digimon with Virus in its type from your trash to your hand. This is primarily used in the event that you're using Alter S as your in-between to X-Antibody, as Alter S has Virus, and he also is very good because he triggers Digivolve 1 on all of your opponent's Digimon, and then deletes all of their Digimon with 5,000 DP or less. Zwart is another good card because then you can use that to respawn some of your other X-Antibodies that might have not survived earlier. Basically, trash the top 3 cards of your deck, and then you can play up to 2 black or purple Digimon cards with a play cost of 8 or less from your trash. The play cost is not a combined play cost. They each have to be 8 or less. So you can bring in 2 of your Dora Grays that might have not survived. You can bring Dora Guz, so they're blockers. If you're running Dark Tyranno, you could bring that in. There's a lot of ways you can work with that. Also, you could run Chaosmon. Chaosmon is really here for his piercing and his Proto Blitz ability. So when I say Proto Blitz, I mean when Chaosmon came out, we never had Blitz yet. Blitz wasn't introduced till BT5 for anyone who's new to the game. The reason it's Proto Blitz is because its effect is technically Blitz. When Digivolving, unsuspend this Digimon, then it can attack your opponent's Digimon. This effect allows you to attack unsuspended Digimon as well. So how Blitz works is, even if you go past your opponent past your memory into your opponent's memory side, you can still attack. So this does the exact same thing, with the caveat that you need to attack one of your opponent's Digimon. You cannot attack straight into security. So you have to target a Digimon to gain the piercing to go to security. As for option cards that you can tech, Breath of Gods, if you don't have Zubagon Punch and you just want to give Reboot. It's also useful if you're going against a yellow hybrid deck that's running Shine Greymon, because it adds the extra effect that it can't have its DP reduced or be returned to its owner's hand or deck. There's also Beast Cyclone. All of your Digimon with blocker or reboot gain security attack +1. If you have a field swarmed with blockers and Doragora, this could potentially make things really broken if you get lucky with your swings and you don't check security. Ultimate Flare is an option that you could run. It's not as effective, but in the event that you hit something like Ancient Greymon or one of the other Ancients like Ancient Kabuterimon, that can really screw your opponent over. Gewalt Schwarmer is another option card. It does have the caveat that you're gonna delete all of your own Digimon unless you're already at your Dora Grays on board, in which case then they're safe. Brave Metal is specifically used for X-Antibody. How it works is you delete one of your opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 6 or less. If you have a Digimon with 5 or more Digivolution cards and X-Antibody in its trait in play, you can delete one of your opponent's Digimon without X-Antibody and its trait, regardless of level. So you want to use this when you have Doragora out, just to get that effect off. Win rate 60% is a good, useful card if you're working with the Omnimons, because it's just going to lower the cost of going into them. I would personally use this in conjunction with Ultra S or Zwart instead of X-Antibody, because X-Antibody is already going to be reduced to 3. With win rate 60%, you're reducing Ultra S and Zwart to a 2-cost evolution. For Tamers, you could run Takumi to facilitate more drawing, since you're just going to keep suspending him to trigger draw 1 when you're Digivolving. The problem is that they have to be, if I recall correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, they have to be outside on board. And oftentimes you want to keep what you're going into Doragora in your breeding area. And then finally, there is Taikamiya Matashita. This is a card that primarily you would also use if you're running the Omnimon X-Antibody package, because all of your Digimon with Omnimon gain Security Attack +1. It also banks on your opponent running level 6s, so that you can gain the 2 extra memory. And that is it for this. I'm really happy with how I was able to get first place with this deck without the Tsunarizumons. And I really hope you enjoyed this. X-Antibody has actually been a really fun deck to play with. Just because I've been getting a bit tired of running hybrid decks all the time. And I'm really excited for when BT8 comes out. Because there's a lot of decks that I want to test out and tinker around with. Definitely probably the most versatile would be the Black War Greymon, because there's just a lot of different ways you can run it. But again, I hope you enjoyed this deck analysis. Leave a like, comment on what you think of this, what cards might you want to tech into your X-Antibody decks, and, subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.